Hey there, it's Kyle with another road tripping video, this time talking about cities. If you're interested in doing a cross-country road trip, but you really only want to see cities, then this is the video for you. I'm going to be covering the best route you can take to where you'll see the most possible cities in your drive across the US. I've posted other videos about road tripping where the main focus is national parks and camping and outdoors hiking kind of stuff, but if that doesn't interest you at all, if you don't even own a pair of hiking boots or never want to spend a day in the woods in your life, but you still want to see the country, then this is a great route to take. Obviously, your starting and ending points are going to be different depending on where you live, but I'm going to do the video as if you're starting from the East Coast and traveling west. The route I'm discussing incorporates portions of Interstates 80, 70, and 76 as you cross the country. I'm not going to be discussing in detail cities that sit along the coast, so I won't be talking about New York, DC, San Francisco, or Los Angeles, but rather the cities you would pass through if you want to get from one coast to the other. I'm going to be discussing the cities from a road tripping perspective, not from a vacation perspective. When you're road tripping, you're probably only going to spend 1, maybe 2 days tops at any of these cities, and all of these places have plenty of stuff to keep you busy for 1 or 2 days, even though you might not be going to these places for vacations. Starting from the east, the first city I'll be discussing is Philadelphia. It's a great place to stop on your road trip, and I do recommend spending some time there. Most of the best things to see in Philly are right downtown or pretty close to it, and there are a lot of pretty cool neighborhoods you can check out as well. A definite must-stop for any road tripper going through Philadelphia is Independence National Park. This is where you have Independence Hall, the Liberty Bell, the Museum of the American Revolution, and the Ben Franklin Museum. And of course, Philadelphia is one of the most important cities in our nation's history, so if you're interested in early U.S. history, then you'll get a lot out of visiting the Independence National Park area right downtown Philly. Another neat site for Philadelphia is the Reading Public Market, and most big cities have a really nice public market, and I'll be mentioning several of them in this video, but the one in Philadelphia is really cool. It's very historic, a lot of cool vendors and shops there, and some pretty good food you can pick up as well. Rittenhouse Square is a nice little area too. It's got a little green space where you'll see locals sitting down having picnics and stuff, but this is also where you have some pretty upscale shopping areas, so if you're interested in seeing some of the high-end boutique and designer kind of shops, and this is the part of town for that. If you want to get your party on, then South Street is a place to do it in Philadelphia. A lot of great bars and clubs and some good nightlife going on. You get a lot of ethnic restaurants, some local shops there too. So if you want to get a little bit rowdy, then South Street is the place to go. There are also a couple of neighborhoods that are lesser known to visitors, but are pretty popular with locals. The first is the East Passyunk area, and that's where you have some of the city's best restaurants. There's some pretty cool local stuff going on there. You also have a part of town called Fishtown. That's a little bit younger and hipper, so if you're cool and young, you can hang out there. But those are a couple of parts of town a lot of people don't go to when they're visiting Philly, but I do think they're worth stopping at. And if you're going to visit Philadelphia, don't leave without eating a cheesesteak. You can get them all over town, but there's one particular intersection that's pretty well known where you have two of the arch rivals right across the street from each other. One's called Geno's and the other one's called Pat's. And what I recommend doing is if you're going with somebody, get in line at one of them, have whoever you're with get in line at the other one. Each order a cheesesteak, and then when you meet back up, cut them in half and just compare them like that. So that's a pretty cool way to do it. I'm sure there are other places in town that are really good, but if you're a visitor, check out that really famous spot in the city to get a good cheesesteak. Continuing west from Philadelphia along I-76 across Pennsylvania, the next big city you'll want to stop at is Pittsburgh. I'll just go ahead and get this out of the way right now. I really like Pittsburgh. It's one of my favorite big cities in the country. It has a really nice downtown. It's a great city for walking around, and it has one of the most beautiful skylines in America as well. Adjacent to downtown is an area called the Strip District, and this is a really cool part of town. This is where you have a lot of international grocery stores and the public market, a lot of cool restaurants and a lot of great shops, and it's really popular with locals and visitors alike. It's probably the most heavily visited part of town for tourists. For some of the best views of downtown, you can take one of the trams up the Duquesne Incline to the top of Mount Washington. There's a nice spot up there where you can get some good views, and or you can be cool like me and walk up it. There really isn't a whole lot to do up on Mount Washington, but if you want to get some good pictures of that beautiful skyline, that's the best place to do it. Just south of downtown, across the river, is a part of town called the South Side. And every big city has a part of town that's kind of younger and hipper, and that's where you have a lot of the cool restaurants and bars and some of the good spots to hang out. And for Pittsburgh, it's the South Side Flat, so if you're interested in hanging out and just kind of getting some drinking on, then that's a great spot to do it. A part of town I really like is called Lawrenceville. You have a lot of cool restaurants and shops there. It's pretty much all local kind of stuff. There's some art galleries there as well, but it's a pretty cool part of town to hang out with locals, and there aren't that many tourists around there. Another nice part of town worth visiting is called Shadyside, and this is a really cool area. It's pretty upscale, so if you want to see some pretty nice old architecture, some of the most beautiful old homes in the city, this is probably the best neighborhood to do it. It's It's got some pretty cool shops and stuff there. Most of them are kind of national chain boutique kind of stores that you have in pretty much every big city. But if you're coming from a small town, they are kind of the types of shops you're not going to have in smaller towns. But overall, Shadyside is a pretty cool part of town to see. Another part of town that I like is called Squirrel Hill, and it's not heavily visited by tourists, but it's got a lot of cool ethnic restaurants there and some shops. So if you want to see some stuff that's a little bit less visited by visitors, check out the Squirrel Hill area. But overall, Pittsburgh isn't a very touristy city. With the exception of the immediate downtown or the Strip District, you're really not going to find that many visitors there. I just really like some of the local neighborhoods and just some of the unique aspects of Pittsburgh, but make sure you do stop there on your road trip. If you head west from Pittsburgh along I-76, you'll hit the Ohio state line, and then onto I-80 west, and the next city you'll get to is Cleveland. Cleveland isn't exactly a tourist hotspot. I mean, most people think of Cleveland, they're probably going to think of negative things first, and it really isn't that bad. It's not somewhere you're going to go on vacation, but for a road tripper, there's plenty of stuff to do there to keep you busy for at least a day. The number one attraction in Cleveland is, of course, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and I'm not sure why the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is in Cleveland, but it is, and I'm a huge music fan, and even though I haven't ever paid the admission to go inside of it. I've been inside the building. You can go inside the lobby and check out the little shop there where they sell some of the music and t-shirts and stuff, but I just too much of a cheapskate to pay the admission price to see the actual museum itself. But there are more things to see and do in Cleveland than just the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. The public market in Cleveland is called the West Side Market, and this is a really great market. I think it's one of the best ones that I've been to. A lot of great produce and imported foods and spices, and there's an oil bar. You can get some flowers there. It has a kind of a Middle Eastern flair to it. A lot of sausages and meats and fish and cheeses, so typical public market kind of stuff, but I do think it's a great one worth visiting. Adjacent to downtown are parts of town called the Near West Side or Gordon Square, and this is where you have kind of the yuppie type areas. There's some art galleries and things going on. It's not the kind of stuff you'd expect to find in Cleveland, so it is pretty neat to see it there. The main bar and nightlife part of town is called the Warehouse District, and it tends to skew pretty young, so I'd be too old to be hanging out there. But if you are a little bit younger, you want to get your big city partying on, then the Warehouse District is a part of town to do it. So overall, Cleveland doesn't have a ton of great sights to see, but it does have more than you might think, and it's up and coming. It's improved a lot. It's not as bad as Detroit, even though it often gets compared to it. So if you're going to be road tripping and want to see cities, make sure you do stop in Cleveland. Next up, we have Chicago, and if you're interested in doing a road trip where you're going to be seeing a bunch of cities, and you definitely have to stop to see Chicago. It's a great place to visit and somewhere you won't want to miss. There's just so much to see and do there, too much to see and do for just one day. So if you only have one day to spend there, you really have to pick and choose what neighborhoods you want to see because there's just so much there. When I go there, I just like to park the car as close as I can to downtown and just spend the entire day walking around. The downtown's really well set up for walking. You can really explore a lot on foot. There's an upscale part of downtown called the Magnificent Mile or the Gold Coast, and there's a street called Oak Street with a lot of fancy shops, boutique stores if you're interested in that kind of stuff. And Rush Street in that same area is kind of like the big nightlife area for the heart of downtown. A lot of cool clubs and things there. So that part of downtown is just really cool to see. But there's a lot more to Chicago than just downtown. There's a lot of cool neighborhoods spread throughout the city, and you'll probably want to check out at least a few of them. A part of town that I like is called Andersonville. It's got a lot of local restaurants and shops. There aren't a lot of chains around there, so it's a pretty cool way to check out a slice of local Chicago. Another neighborhood that I like is off the tourist trail is called Avondale, or maybe Avondale. I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but it's historically the Polish district. There's a lot more ethnic groups that have moved in there, but you still have some pretty cool Polish delis there. If you want to get some nice Polish sausage there, there's a couple of great spots to see. So if you want to see some kind of old Chicago, kind of immigrant ethnic neighborhoods, that's a pretty cool area to check out. Logan Square is kind of the cool hipster part of town. Every city has kind of like the cool hipster part of town, and for Chicago, it's the Logan Square area. So if you're into that kind of stuff, that's the place to be. A pretty well-known part of town is called Wrigleyville, and that's, of course, right next to the Wrigley Field area where the Chicago Cubs play baseball. And it's a pretty cool area to hang out if there's a game going on, even if you don't actually go to the game, because before and after, there's going to be a lot of activity going on. But that part of town is just pretty cool. Worth checking out. One thing I think you have to do if you're going to visit Chicago is to have an authentic deep dish pizza. And if you're in the mood for a typical type of pizza, you might not want a deep dish, but if you want something more hearty, almost like a lasagna, then check out a place where you can get an authentic deep dish. And if you're going to stay the night in Chicago, I think you definitely have to check out a live blues club. You got two really well-known ones there. You have Buddy Guy's Legends, and you got Blue Chicago. Both have live blues every night, so I think that's just a really cool slice of Chicago and definitely worth seeing. If you're going to be doing a road trip like this and spending a day at each of these cities, consider spending 2 days at Chicago. There's just so much more to see and do. There's a lot bigger than any of the cities on this route, but either way, definitely stop in Chicago. To maximize the number of cities you can see on this road trip, after Chicago, head south on I-55. That'll take you straight into St. Louis. When most people think of St. Louis, they think of the Arch first, and yeah, go down to the Arch, check it out, take the elevator to the top, take a couple of pictures of downtown, but there's so much else to see than just the Arch. The Soulard neighborhood right downtown is the historic neighborhood, some cool nightlife and restaurants and shops, and if you want to hear some live music, that's the place to do it. A new development right downtown is called the Ballpark Village with the new Cardinal Stadium, so a lot of cool things going on. They're kind of like the Wrigleyville area in Chicago, so if there's a game going on, even if you're not actually going to the game, there's a lot of activity before and after the game. You can take a tour of the Budweiser factory at the Budweiser Experience Tours, and you'll see some Clydesdales there. So if you're interested in that kind of stuff, that's worth checking out. The hipster neighborhood for St. Louis is called the Del Mar Loop, or they just call it the Loop, and that's just another area. We've got the funky shops and restaurants and stuff. So if you want to see some of the young, cool hangout spots, that's the place to do it. Chicago and Memphis are much more known for the blues, but St. Louis is home of the National Blues Museum. It's opened up fairly recently, so if you're into blues music, this is the best museum for it. If you're interested in animals and nature, then surprisingly enough, St. Louis has a couple of spots you might want to visit. The zoo is great. It's one of the best zoos around, and it's free. And there's also a butterfly house there, so that's pretty cool too. If you want to see a bunch of butterflies flying around you, then do check out the butterfly house. So do make sure you stop in St. Louis on any road trip where you're trying to see as many big cities as you possibly can. Continuing west on Interstate 70 from St. Louis, the next big city you'll want to stop in is Kansas City. It's not the most exciting big city downtown in America, but there are a couple of neighborhoods that are worth seeing. The Country Club Plaza area is your upscale shopping district. You have some nice restaurants. Most of the stores are kind of like chain boutiques, but you do have some pretty unique stores there as well. For nightlife and partying, the Westport District is a part of town you want to be hanging out in. It's got kind of a younger type crowd there, but even I don't feel too old hanging out there. You may want to see the Crown Center downtown. If you have kids with you, there's a couple of cool attractions there. Hallmark Cards is headquartered in Kansas City and the Visitor Center there, so if you're feeling sentimental, you have to say it with a card, well, that's the place to do it. Something that I think is pretty cool that probably nobody else will is State Line Road, and just kind of a small residential road that is the state line between Kansas and Missouri. So, these houses are right across the street from each other, but they're in separate states. So, I don't know, I think that's pretty neat and very unique slice of Kansas City. There are arguably more interesting museums per capita in Kansas City than anywhere else in the U.S., and so you may be interested in seeing one or more of them. There's a strong jazz heritage in Kansas City, and it's the home of the American Jazz Museum and the 18th and Vine Jazz District. It's also the home of the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum, and if you're a big college basketball fan, it's the home of the College Basketball Experience and the College Basketball Hall of Fame. Just outside the city in the suburb of Independence is the Harry Truman Presidential Library and Museum. And as far as quirky museums go, they don't get much stranger than the Hair Museum, where all kinds of things made of human hair are on display. Hair. Yeah. And of course, you can't leave Kansas City without trying some of that world-famous barbecue, and there's a lot of great places to get it. You can ask 10 locals what's the best place in town. You'll probably get 15 different answers, but as a visitor, you'll probably want to check out the Arthur Bryant's, the historic one right in the Jazz District. I've also eaten at the Gates Barbecue. Those are both really good, but as long as you're getting some authentic barbecue, you really can't go wrong. So Kansas City, not the most exciting big city in the U.S., but certainly worth stopping at on your road trip. If you're doing this route heading west, after Kansas City, you'll head west along I-70 across the entire boring state of Kansas and eastern Colorado, but it will all be well worth it when you reach Denver. Denver is one of my favorite big cities in the country, and it's certainly somewhere you're going to want to stop on your road trip. There are a lot of great neighborhoods worth checking out, all in the immediate downtown area. It's a great city for walking, so if you're in pretty good shape, you can walk around to most of these sites. The 16th Street Mall is kind of touristy. We have a lot of the chain stores there. There's a free shuttle that goes up and down the street, which is convenient, but that's not going to be the only place you want to see. Union Station is another area downtown that's historic. It's got some good shops and restaurants and bars and worth visiting. Larimer Square is another area with some good shops and restaurants and bars, and it's a good spot to people watch. It's got kind of a neat look to it, and it's a little less frequented by visitors than the 16th Street Mall or Union Station, but it is worth visiting. Cherry Creek is the upscale shopping area with expensive stores and boutiques and stuff, so if you're interested in blowing a lot of money, well, go to Cherry Creek. Denver is home to a lot of microbreweries, and they have microbrewery tours where you can sample a lot of them. And it's also home to the huge Coors Brewery out in the suburb of Golden, which Yeah, I think it's pretty interesting. It's a free tour. You get a couple of free beers at the end. So check out the microbreweries, check out the macrobrewery. If you're a big music fan, then you've undoubtedly heard of Red Rocks. It's a natural amphitheater above the city, and you can visit the amphitheater when there's no show going on. So it's kind of cool to walk up there. You can kind of check out the facility when there's nothing going on. But overall, Denver's a great city, worth visiting. It's a lot of fun, so make sure you do stop there on your road trip. Even if you have no intention of doing any hiking or seeing any national parks, you're going to get a lot of gorgeous scenery as you drive across Colorado with Interstate 70. The highest point on any U.S. interstate is along I-70 at about 12,000 feet as you go across Colorado. You'll head west into Utah, and the last city I'm going to mention in this video is Salt Lake City. The downtown's pretty nice and worth walking around, and wherever you go in Salt Lake City, you're going to see the beautiful mountains all around you. The dominant site downtown is, of course, the Temple Square, and it's a beautiful piece of architecture, and you can visit it and take tours of it. You don't have to be Mormon to do it. You can also see the Mormon Tabernacle Choir, and you can also visit the Family History Library. And if you're interested in genealogy or researching your family history, this is the best place to do it. And it is run by the LDS Church, but again, you don't have to be Mormon to visit it. The City Creek Center areas, you have a lot of good shopping. It's mostly kind of chain, upscale, boutique kind of places, but there are also some good restaurants there as well. Around the Capitol Hill and Marmalade District is where you have kind of the cool hipster neighborhood. Yeah, there are plenty of hipsters in Salt Lake City, so you can check out some of the boutique shops and some of the funky places there. You can also do the pretty short but kind of steep hike to the top of Ensign Peak, which is really gorgeous and gives you the best views of downtown. So again, Salt Lake's the last city I'm going to go into detail with on this video, but if you want to continue to see more cities, you can head west along I-80. It'll eventually take you into San Francisco, or you can go south along I-15 through fabulous Las Vegas, Nevada, and then on into Los Angeles. So that's my overview of the best possible road trip route you can take to cross the country and see the most cities. There's no other route you could take to allow you to see more cities without doing all kinds of weird, backtracking and zigzagging kind of stuff. So if you want to see cities, you want to cross the country, this is the route. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give me a thumbs up to let me know you approve. And if you're interested in stuff like this, you want some more info on road tripping or U.S. geography, check out my channel. That's kind of stuff that I'm posting. But yeah, thanks for watching. Geography King signing out and about to go put on some Kevlar body armor and walk through the ghetto of Chicago.